The price action on XRP over the last couple of weeks has been pissing everyone off because it's created a lot of uncertainty about what comes next. We've had a ton of people reach out to me personally and the other creators on this channel asking, what's going to happen to XRP? Should I be selling? Should I be adding to the dips? Do we see more downside? And the reality is this volatility is starting to get frustrating and seems or feels very much like that March through November range we experienced in 2024 where virtually nothing happened. And as you can see right here, almost a month ago on May 6th, we experienced a range low of about $2.08. We pumped and rallied all the way to 265, only to see all of those gains given back this last 2 weeks back down to $2.08. We're experiencing a little bit of a bounce, but people are truly uncertain. And that's because we're experiencing a lot of back and forth. From the macroeconomic standpoint, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding Trump and the tariffs, China not honoring a new trade deal, which is probably a given, politically motivated federal court judges slapping down those Trump tariffs and then being reinstated, Bitcoin rallying for new highs while the rest of the altcoin market fails to hit new highs, and yet XRP from a fundamental perspective remains strong as they're consistently gaining adoption and new partnerships for their RLUSD stablecoin. We're likely going to see stablecoin regulation come through a Genius Act and a bill. They have a massive head start and a deal in Dubai and all over the Middle East where major players want to integrate the XRPL into their current system and even start adopting real world assets through asset tokenization on the XRPL with their real estate market. Across the board, fundamentally, things couldn't look stronger, but the price action has been looking really weak, which is why people are afraid. So in this video, I'm going to dive into the technical analysis and mostly focus on the charts because it's really hard to predict what's going to happen next from a fundamental side. So we're going to focus solely on the price action in this video and also look a little bit at the on-chain analytics as well as the futures deals when it comes to day traders and what they're doing over the next week or two. So let's dive into this video. And really quickly before we start, if you haven't had the chance, head on over to Bull Runners HQ directly on X or Twitter and then check out the pinned post which was made on May 26th to enter to potentially have a shot at winning $100 worth of XRP in our weekly giveaway. Yes, we run this every single week, so you can enter every single week, but we have to make sure that all of these steps are done and we do verify, and it is completely random. You have to follow us on Bull Runners HQ. You have to like, retweet, and comment XRP on that pinned post. And then you have to subscribe to our daily crypto newsletter at bullrunners.com. When you click that link, it should take you to a page that looks like this. You enter your email to get our free ebook and unlock the 23 secrets to becoming a crypto millionaire. We put a lot of time and effort into this thing, so it's completely and totally free value to help you pick the next explosive altcoin. And every Sunday, we will announce the winner in the newsletter. So go ahead and do that right now, and let's get into the video. But before, as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PauliDeFi, PAULIEDEFI. And in this video, we're going to be doing a lot of the technical analysis stuff. So if some of this is over your head or maybe you don't have your bases covered, be sure to join Altcoin Pro University, your one-stop shop for crypto education. I actually have a course in there called Technical Analysis Essentials that teaches you everything you need to know to follow along in these videos. Because although a lot of people dive into, let's say, a YouTube video to get perspective or maybe make a decision, it's actually far more valuable that you learn how to do it yourself and understand why I'm talking about or sharing the things that I'm sharing versus always relying on YouTubers or people on Twitter and X to tell you what to think. That's going to give you your best advantage at succeeding, and you can find that at altcoinpro.com. Anywho, I'm going to look at Bitcoin first and foremost because it currently leads the market in market cap. It's no different than, let's just say, the S&P 500 when it comes to being a benchmark or the index in order for fund managers to see whether or not they're actually returning alpha, which is basically earning anything more than the benchmark or the S&P 500 on an average yearly basis. basis. So if the benchmark is 9.2 to 11.2% per year, if a fund manager or anyone that's an investor can earn more than that by investing in other things than just the S&P 500, then they would actually be returning alpha. Well, I like to treat, and actually the majority of really professional investors like to treat Bitcoin as that benchmark. Bitcoin consistently outperforms virtually everything else in the TradFi markets or the traditional financial markets. However, it is considered the benchmark. There are a lot of cryptos that actually outperform Bitcoin on a yearly basis, but they also carry far more risk. And that's typically how fund managers approach, let's say, stocks or traditional financial markets as well. If you invest in the S&P 500, that's a pretty safe return over a sustained period of time, but they're looking to get better returns. Very few people can consistently do that year over year over year, decade over decade. These are people like Warren Buffett, which is why there's so few of him, and so many other investors that do really well for a few years, like in a bull market, but then don't do well over a long period of time. So since Bitcoin is that benchmark, I like to track Bitcoin and see how it's doing this week. Is it relatively weak or strong to the market? Is it dumping harder? And if Bitcoin is, let's just say, up 10% this week, then I would like to see something else, an altcoin that I'm tracking, up 12 or plus percent. In other words, outperforming Bitcoin and doing stronger than Bitcoin. And if it's not, that's a good indicator that it's a very weak product and that there's no demand from investors on that product. So I always track Bitcoin first and foremost, and then I look at the altcoins that we're looking at. In this video, we're going to be looking solely at XRP and Bitcoin. So let's dive into the charts. So let's take a look at Bitcoin and just see what we can find. I like to use a lot of horizontal supports and resistances, and I don't just use a line. I typically like to use a range. As you can see, at one point in time, this range or price action right here back in December seemed to be a pretty strong all-time high for Bitcoin, as it pumped all the way up and then sold off pretty hard, not once, but twice, and then saw resistance over a period of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight days after the new all-time high came in here at 109 on the Trump inauguration. Since that point in time, Bitcoin has actually dumped pretty hard down to 74,000 and rallied right back up to that all-time high, putting in a new all-time high. But this is where I'm beginning to be a little bit weary, and I'm not terribly bearish just yet because this is really strong price action. I just need to see Bitcoin hold the $103,000 range, especially when I pull up that VRVP, which is our volume profile, because if we dump from here, we're coming right back down to at least the $96,000 level, which is our next major range of support. But this would officially put in our bull trap or a higher high and a breakdown. People start entering on the strength right here, only to see the market break down for a new low below these lows. And so this actually is extremely important for Bitcoin to hold. And if Bitcoin fails to hold this range on a 34 EMA, then yes, we're coming back down to 96. And I think the trend is now going to be down, and it's very much possible and potential we can get a new lower low below $74,000. However, long term, the trend is up. So I'm saying that this possibility right here, and again, in markets, all things are possible, which is why you have to remain agnostic. You can't just be a total permabull 24/7. I like to take the punches as they come. This scenario is highly unlikely considering we're in a long-term bull market, especially zooming out at the weekly. In other words, a better place to buy would probably be at the $90,000 range if it were to dump here for a new higher low on a longer-term weekly time frame. So that's why sometimes it pays to zoom out. When in doubt, zoom out. But it's still something that I don't want to hold through all of that range and volatility if I'm a swing trader. From an investment perspective, it's probably important to pay attention and just practice patience for a better day to enter. And I'm talking if you're investing in crypto over the next couple of years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. But from a swing trading perspective, I'm currently sitting out in cash because of this recent dump and the fact that we're below our range support. So unless we come back into a healthier range, and I'll go down into a 4-hour time frame above that 34 EMA and arguably back above 108, I'm actually actually just sitting on a lot of cash in my swing trade portfolio, which means this portfolio or this money that I have, I'm trading into strength and moves where I can hold and make a decent amount of cash. But I'm not liking this trend in the fact that we broke below 106, which was our range support on a shorter term time frame, and now we've put in a new low and we're dangerously close to those lows right here at about 103. So although we are seeing some strength in a retrace, the volume is actually extremely weak, while the volume on the sell side is extremely big relative to this buy volume. So this looks more like a retrace to me. This looks more like a bull trap, which is why I'm currently sitting out. Now that's going to correlate and translate into something like XRP, which right now is relatively weaker than Bitcoin. So now let's just take a look at XRP. And the reason that I know, or better yet, I can confidently tell you on this channel that XRP is relatively weaker is because when Bitcoin pumped for a new all-time high sometime here on like May 14th, XRP hit a lower high on its own chart of about 265. In other words, Bitcoin put in a new all-time high above the prior all-time high in that same period of time, while XRP put in a lower high. Now, when I use an actual trend line, and I don't use these as often as horizontal supports and resistances because they can be easily misinterpreted and the line is constantly moving, this seems to be our downtrend. We had one right here for a short while that told us that this breakout was going to occur. This is the longer term trend line, and as you can see, it broke down perfectly on the Trump pump saying that he would add XRP to a crypto strategic reserve in the United States. This was our next lower high right here before the breakout for a range high, and we're seeing support not only here, but we're actually seeing a confluence of support right here at the 208 range. However, anything below this at this moment in time is going to be very dangerous. I did say I'm adding, I should say, small amounts to my position on XRP somewhere at 213 and 14. So far, we've smashed that target, dumped even a little bit lower than I would have expected and liked, but you have to hold through the daily range just to see if there's follow through or confirmation, which again, I teach for our Altcoin Pro University members privately what that even means and how to approach confirmation. That said, anything below here at this point in time, this 207 to 208 range is extreme danger territory, because this would truly be a new breakdown below range lows right here for a potential lower low to at least 150, if not 145, which would be our next support going all the way back. And if I could get out of the way right here to November of 2024. So that said, it's not like it's going to happen. I'm not trying to tell you to be scared. I'm currently holding whatever position I have on XRP, but I have not added any more. I was dollar cost averaging on something like Bitcoin. I've gotten out a bit because I've already made my money from the 88K range up to the 112 range. And with that slight breakdown, I just want to de-risk a little, take a little bit off the table on the breakdown below the 20 EMA. But that said, on XRP, things are not looking good. If Bitcoin continues to break down, XRP is going to break down. If XRP breaks below the $2 range right here for one final move, then yes, it's extremely likely we're at least getting a double bottom, if not a lower low. And if something like that were to occur, I will definitely be adding to my positions a lot more heavy down here at the 145 to 150 range. And that should lead us, if that is the bottom, and I'm not saying that's going to occur, we have to watch Bitcoin. Let's just remove that tool, take this percentage tool, grab and drag that. I think that could be the actual bottom in a longer term bull market for at least a 230+% gain. This would be a tremendous move for something like XRP. And XRP, relatively speaking, has been holding its range for quite some time, better than virtually everything else that's a large cap crypto in the market. So this speaks volumes to the fact that there are a lot of diamond hands, a lot of institutional people that simply don't want to sell it as much, and just the team over at Ripple is likely doing a good job of market making and not selling a boatload of their bags in order to have cash to fund all of these deals. They're still likely very cash rich and probably able to enter and buy something like USDC without selling a bunch of Ripple, because it's likely possible they've just consistently sold through this entire range while maintaining a good strong price range. So that said, we do look like we're ready to bounce, and if we hold this, and even if I pull up a VRVP, go down to a shorter term time frame, you can see that there's a lot of support, and we'll just give it a second to load up right here at the 220 to 208 range. Anything below this range, again, danger territory. If we can break back above, and let me go ahead and turn that VRVP off and turn these EMAs back on, turn that daily back on. If we can break right back above this range right here of at least 235 up to 245, this is going to be the range to beat. Now, if I turn those EMAs off, turn on the 10 and 20 EMAs, they have crossed over, very bearish. However, we are bullish from the support zone range right here. So we have a confluence of support on three different things. This looks kind of bearish right now, although I think we could break right back out. I still do not, at this moment in time, want to add to any of my XRP positions until I see strength. In other words, if I'm adding right here, I'm just adding to risk. So instead, I'd like to add to strength above 235 to 245. Those would be my price targets. And anything above there, I think could easily take us above 265 and into at least $3, if not a new all-time high at $5. So even a gain like this, let's say we do not continue breaking down from here and we go all the way up to that, $5 range, which would I think would be our first major move of a new all-time high to a psychological resistance of $5 XRP. I think a lot of people would be taking profits there, would still be another 130% gain. So on a positive note, everything is extremely bullish. We have seen literally no Bitcoin enter exchanges to sell, and actually on every single dip, including the most recent one, even more Bitcoin was bought off exchanges and then removed from exchanges, denoted by this purple line all the way down here, consistently hitting new all-time lows. Speaking volumes to the demand, so even though the price is not doing as well, and even though the price can continue dropping a bit, I expect this trend to the downside to continue on exchange reserves, which would lead prices to go way higher in the longer term. In other words, this leads me to believe we're still in a bull market, and I do want to be adding to the right dips or the right strength. But whenever we're in the middle like this, I don't like to add at all, and that's exactly where we're at right now on the price action. So it's extremely important to pay attention to something like this. And by the way, on something like XRP, if I were to zoom in right now onto the current price action on the token, you can see that a lot of XRP is also leaving exchanges on this dip. So it doesn't mean that it can't dip lower. It simply means that bigger players are buying it, but not enough to really pump the price. They're just consistently adding small amounts over a sustained period of time and then removing it from exchanges in order to hold it into higher prices. Now, they can be doing all sorts of things in the futures market to manipulate the price in order to buy it lower. And that's exactly what I believe is occurring right now, which is why I want to look at the futures market. And by the way, I don't want to make any assumptions even before I dive on the chart. I didn't look at it before this video, which is why it's helpful for anyone that's newer to crypto or just in general is an investor in crypto and has been for a while to actually take the perspectives and the approach that I do, not because I'm always right, but because I'm truly agnostic. Since I don't know, I don't make my opinion until I get the right information. And even then, I'm not always going to be right. So I do it with good risk management. But at the end of the day, I do take into account all of the things that I'm sharing with you before I make decisions. One of those would be when I come to CoinGlass and I go to the liquidation map, you can see that we have liquidations on exchanges right here. And I usually use Bitcoin and then XRP afterwards. So I remove the exchanges right here. I just keep the cumulative longs and shorts, and I do it from a 7-day perspective, which gives me far more data. I should have removed those after. And you can see that right now, the majority of people are short to the tune of $12.7 billion on XRP. This is the amount of money that would be liquidated. So there's far more weight on the short side, or more people with more money, or even fewer people with way more money are betting to the downside. And I found this actually to be a really good indicator of where the market's going to go in the short term, not the long term, the short term, while only 3.38 billion are long. So this leads me to believe we're actually going to continue to go lower. And I could assume that if that's happening on Bitcoin, it might be happening on XRP. And as you can see, that is the truth on XRP. There's so few longs on the long side. We're sitting on $94 million, while on the short side, we have more than 3 times that, to the tune of $330 million on the short side. So I do believe we're probably going lower, and that this is likely just a small bounce or a retrace before a potential next move down, which would not look good. But for those of you guys who are sitting on cash and paying attention to these videos, I think this is a really good opportunity. I will definitely be adding, if we break down, adding to at least 180 all the way down to 160, and I will be adding a far larger position somewhere down here at 145 to 150. So I'm going to weight my buys to the downside if something like that occurs. And by the way, that wouldn't mean that we're at the end of a bull market trend because I'm looking at the grander scheme of things. It simply means that we have a better opportunity to accumulate lower, especially if you were like pissed off that you missed XRP up to $3.40 or $3. Here's your next shot to buy back in before it hits $5. And that's it for the video, folks. I hope you learned something new. I hope you got value. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you did. And also check out altcoinpro.com. When you're a member, you actually get access to a boatload of courses that you can unlock every single month for a very low price, in my opinion, for the amount of value that you get, alongside our DeFi yield quick wins, which I'll share with you in just a second. But I even have a technical analysis essentials course that I put together with you with a bunch of different documents that you can download and resources you can use. And so, for example, not only do we lay out the groundwork in terms of an investment mindset that you're actually going to need to succeed, how to do proper risk management, how to create your own game plan, but we also show you how to use the trading or charting platform that I use on these videos, which is by far the best in the world. I've used them all. This is easily the best and has access to the most tools and indicators, and the data is very accurate when it comes to the prices and the oracles. Not having to explain all of that, not only do I teach you how to use drawing tools and how to properly do trend lines and use the long and short position tools, but I also teach you the psychology behind candlesticks and how to simply look at one chart without any indicators at all, just using candlesticks, how you can win in the markets when it comes to bullish and bearish candlesticks and patterns, and even your base indicators like moving averages, RSI, Fibonacci, oscillators like the MACD and stochastic, how to properly use these tools. And then finally, the 4 horsemen of technical analysis, which is something that I've coined and I believe are the most important thing that you could use. If you just use those 4 things, which I teach you inside of this one course, you can be a pro crypto investor and make a crazy amount of money. But that's not all we offer. We offer all sorts of things. For example, on this calendar, every single week, not only do I host a live Tuesday technical analysis call and you can ask all of your questions live, but we also host experts inside of the crypto space. We do monthly state of the market calls, we do kickoff calls, we do crypto calls, and so much more. We're constantly going to be adding to this membership and the calls live every single week. And if that wasn't enough, we share tons of different cool opportunities to put your crypto to work for you. This is crypto that you're likely already sitting on, or it's a very easy move into one of these yield farms where you can actually earn interest on your crypto. Many of our members are really succeeding using these yield farms just to pay for their membership, which is $97 a month. Most of these yield farms will return you at least that, with like anywhere on the low end of like $3,000 to on the high end of $20,000. It just depends on where you're at. You don't have to have all of that cash in order to earn some yield back to essentially pay for this membership. And if we can't help you to earn something back in one of these DeFi yield quick wins, then just ask for your money back in 14 days. But let's help you make this ride in crypto and this membership to Altcoin Pro completely free. And we have 1,000+ members that have consistently been paying to be here, and that's because the value is bar none some of the best in the space, and we stand by that. So go ahead and go to altcoinpro.com to check that out. Thanks so much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one, my friend. Goodbye.